Hi, I'm Kevin Klein. Welcome to another edition of Inside Winnipeg Politics. I am joined by two of my Winnipeg Sun colleagues, columnist Geoff Currier and columnist Royce Koop, who is also a professor of political sciences at the University of Manitoba. First up, gentlemen, I want to talk about a story that was on the Winnipeg Sun Friday about Councillor Russ Wyatt, where at the last city council meeting, they voted to reprimand Councillor Wyatt for saying that the CAO at the time, Mr. Michael Jack, who now oddly is a deputy minister with the NDP after getting let go from the city, he suggested that he should face a reprimand himself or even be fired because of a staff member within the city of Winnipeg who cost the city over $5 million in a judgment. He came out and said, well, you didn't even reprimand the staff member, you didn't suspend the staff member, you did nothing. And in any business, that wouldn't happen. So the buck stops with him, the CAO. He should have taken action, and Wyatt was talking to that. And now all of a sudden, all the council members, Luke's and all of them say, oh, no, you got to be reprimanded. You're getting reprimanded for this. This is ridiculous, is it not, Geoff?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'd reprimand the whole city council for passing that budget, but that's a whole other that's a whole other conversation. I know, hey, I get that Michael Jack had his supporters on council and his detractors, just as any CAO is apt to have. And Russ Wyatt is certainly one of the more colorful and outspoken councillors on Winnipeg City Council. But to suggest that he be reprimanded for saying we got to remove this CAO, those are the kinds of things that city councilors ought to be saying if they believe it, if they have some evidence to back it up. You can't just go off half-cocked and shoot your mouth off on it. But if he has reason and says, look, I think we should fire our CAO or he should resign because A, B, C, and D, I don't see any cause for reprimand in a situation like that.
Yeah, it's Wyatt made the argument that he's representing his constituents. He's taking on an issue that's concerning to them, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. The bigger concern for me is at the city level and at the school board level, we've seen a weaponization of these code of conduct complaints, especially at the school board level among school board trustees. And we don't want that to kind of seep into local politics as well. We want people that are elected to speak on behalf of their constituents, to speak their minds, to speak their conscience, to do so. And when we see these sorts of complaints used to try to shut people down, that's concerning from a democratic perspective. I have real concerns about that.
And we always say, reasonable people can disagree. Where are the reasonable people?
Right.
Yeah.
And I was on city council when they decided to hire Michael Jack as the CAO. He was in another executive position. He's been at the city for, I don't know, 20 years or whatever at that time. I stood up and I said I wasn't voting for him because I didn't think he was the right choice. I didn't think he was qualified. I didn't think he would do a good job. I mean, this is the guy that was also in charge of the police headquarters scandal. He was there at the time when they were doing the construction. They couldn't get questions answered. He was also the one that implemented the, 1-800 Ask a CAO so that, councilors couldn't get information. I wasn't reprimanded for that. I'm not in council. I mean, outside by the media and all that. Of course, I was a troublemaker. But the reality is, and I agree with you guys, if you're a city councilor, if you can't challenge those people that are in power, why are you there? Why are we paying all this money for city councilors? And who gives the right to I think it was Mayor Gillingham and Debbie Sharma that moved the motion to reprimand him. Well, who gives you the right to do that? You're not the judge and jury of what councilors do. The people that live in their ward that vote for them, that's the judge and jury. They'll make a decision come the next election.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of an artifact of the age we're coming out of, the cancel culture. If you don't like the thing that Wyatt says, if you don't appreciate it, if you think it's wrong, then say so. Say why. Make the argument. That's why council is there, and convince people of that. Don't try to shut people down by using these codes
Well,
of conduct.
yeah, and here's the point. If you think that what Russ Wyatt said was wrong in calling for the CAO's ouster, and you believe that the CAO was incorrectly or unjustifiably dismissed, stand up in council chambers and say that and see if you get reprimanded. Because it was the mayor and his inner circle who wanted Michael Jack gone. Are you ready to challenge that? If
Right.
you think Michael Jack should not have been fired, let's hear from you.
Right. And then if you go back to the budget negotiations or debate, sorry, that was happening last Thursday at City Hall, I watched it, and Councillor Brian Mays was making a point about the secrecy, the fact that he couldn't get information from the mayor's staff. And he was going on, and he wasn't criticizing the staff, but he was saying how they withhold information. The mayor stood up to have him censored and make him apologize for condemning his staff. Like, how dare he? So he's not allowed to challenge anybody. They all have to sit there like kids at daycare and do what they're told. Like, again, I don't understand this, and I think you guys hit it on the head there. It's cancel culture just under a different disguise. These whole policies that they put in is just a way for cancel culture to take over, and that I think that's what we witnessed.
Yeah, I've talked to school trustees in Winnipeg, not in the Winnipeg school division, but in one of the big divisions, who said that when a controversial or a potentially controversial issue comes up at trustee meetings, they're afraid to open their mouths. They know there's a chance they'll get hit with one of these code of conduct complaints, and so they're basically being censored. If that's seeping into municipal politics, that's a real concern. We don't want to have this kind of shutting down of our elected officials and their ability to speak on our behalf.
Sounds like Newspeak. Anybody who's read 1984 remembers Newspeak, and that's the era we're now living in. It's Newspeak, that you have to say things in a certain way, and if you don't, you could wind up being, hey, fine. Hey, if you open up your mouth and you say something controversial, you expect to be challenged.
Yep.
You don't expect to be canceled,
Yep.
or you hope anyway.
Well, and I think that's what Trump's happening, with the Trump factor, I call it, in the United States, that maybe the silent majority that has stood back and not spoken. And I did a video about that when we got beat up by Abi Khan in the Free Press at the Winnipeg Sun. I'm not going to be silenced and tried to be cancel cultured because we wrote a story, because it was news and it was factual and it was truthful. So to be able to then fall on these things, and this is another level of politics that does it all the time, right? You can't say that. But however, in the provincial legislature and in the Parliament of Canada, you can lie through your teeth inside there. You're not held accountable for that at all. You could say whatever you could say. You were the king of the world, and no one could ever challenge you on that because you're allowed to say whatever you want. And they seem to do it. They seem to attack each other until it offends one person. Then they stand up, they complain. It's getting out of hand. It's becoming kangaroo court.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, folks: you do not have the right to not be offended.
Yeah,
You don't have the right to not be offended.
Yeah, and you know that personally, Kevin, parliamentary privilege. These people in the legislature and parliament can say whatever they want to, but that does give them the opportunity to speak on behalf of their constituents. Councillors and school trustees don't have that. I'd actually like to see them have a little bit more protection to speak up and speak for on their own behalf, on their constituents. Right now, these code of conduct complaints are just being used way too often to shut people down.
Well, and in party politics, I was in party politics, and I can tell you're shut down all the time. I mean, you're shut down every day. You can't say anything. If you want to speak, or when I was there, if you wanted to say something in the legislature, they wanted to read it before you said it. I mean, and for me, I'm one of those kind of people. Oh, here's what I'm going to say, and then I'll say something entirely different. What are you going to do? But it's against the party rules. They want to control what you say, and really, that's just getting away from a democracy. And we might as well just be a communistic society and then call it a day.